Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now, today I wanted to chat about my favorite books of 2020. As you might know, 2020 was like the year of YA fantasy for me. There were so many books coming out and I was just taken by all of it. So here we are, which means that this video is going to be mostly YA and new adult geared. So if that's not your cup of tea, no worries. But if it is your cup of tea, please stay tuned. This year, a lot of things will change, and if I've posted my reading goals already, I will leave a link down to that. But I will be reading a lot of different types of novels and a lot of different types of reading genres. However, for 2020, I'm still grateful for what I got to read because it threw me into a whole new world and got me back into reading as much as I used to read a few years back because I was quite the bookworm. I have compiled my top 5 series / books of 2020 and I will present them to you in this video. The first series that I want to talk about is a graphic novel series, and that is called Friends. Now, I talked about this one extensively in my December wrap-up, so please go check that out. I go into what it's about and what I really love about it, but it is the cutest graphic novel series. It is geared more towards younger readers, but the themes that are discussed in Friends, even though they're set in a high school setting, I think are really relatable to folks out in the real world that are out of school. So I still think it could be really enjoyable for an adult reader as long as you go into it with those expectations. So I really enjoyed it. I read volumes 1 through 4 in 2020, and if any more volumes come out this year, I will definitely be reading them. The next on my series is another graphic novel that really pulled my attention, and this one is more of an adult graphic novel, and that is Monstrous. This is volume 1. I have volumes 1 through 4, and volume 5 came out in 2020, which I don't yet have, but I will be getting it. This graphic novel just completely pulled me in. It is a high, I think, epic fantasy, and the artwork is absolutely stunning. The content is stunning, the writing is stunning, and the story itself is really, really interesting, and it's nothing like I've ever read before. But honestly, the first thing that pulled me in was how visually stunning it was. I haven't seen artwork like this in a graphic novel, I think, ever, and the amount of detail and the color and the tone of the entire novel is just so good. If you enjoy graphic novels but you haven't gotten to this series yet, then you should definitely pick it up. It is worth your while. The next book that I wanted to discuss was actually on my December wrap-up video. A lot of my favorite reads for 2020 were in December, so I feel really lucky to have read such good books last month. The next book is called Akata Witch by Nyendi Okorafor. Now, this is a YA series, and I read the first one in the series in December. It is set in Nigeria, and we follow our female main character who ends up discovering that she has powers. But in this world, in this magical community, you generally have powers from your ancestors. As far as she knows, none of her ancestors ever had powers, so she is considered a free agent, someone who manifests power on their own. And of course, through that, she meets other people that are just like her, and she develops this band of friends, and they eventually have to beat this evil man that is tormenting their community and stealing children. It is a really good book. It is a really well thought out world and magical system. There are a lot of interesting checks and balances in place, and I feel like it's kind of an underrated series because I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. I don't hear a lot of people that have read it or have ever referenced it, and I just think it's such a cool world. I don't know if it's based on African lore or African mythology or Nigerian lore more specifically, but it is beautiful and just the imagery is really vivid. I did read this on audiobook, however, and I did discover that I don't like reading fantasy books on audio. I will be picking up the second one in the series on ebook, I think. I'm hoping to have a better experience there, but I can say that the book is really, really good. So my second favorite books of 2020 is actually more of a series, although I do have favorites within the series, and maybe it's more of like a new favorite author, but it will have to be Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas, and this is the entire paperback box set. I think these are the UK white cover versions, and I think that they're just so beautiful and really superior to the US covers. I don't like the US covers for a lot of Mass's books for some reason, but I really enjoyed this series and I ended up binging it in like August. It was great. It is definitely her YA series, but unlike her other series, which is Equatar, which is a more adult series, this one is centered around the fantasy and regaining of the throne and the politics and the war in the world and even the other worlds that might be warring with this one. It's really interesting. It does have some trigger warnings. There is abuse in this. Since there is war, there usually is abuse with those kinds of books. So I do want to make people aware that if you are going to read this series, it does come with its own set of trigger warnings. So just fair warning. But I do believe that if you do like fantasy and that you like YA fantasy, you will probably like Mass's works. They are great. It is a really well thought out, very complex world, and you'll see that it gets more and more complex the more the series goes on by the size of the books, because they definitely get chunkier and chunkier as we go deeper into the series, but it's definitely worth it. My favorite books from this series are definitely Heir of Fire, which is the third one, and Queen of Shadows, which is the fourth one in the series, and then Assassin's Blade is the prequel. So if you did get to Heir of Fire or Queen of Shadows and you loved them as much as I did, please let me know in the comments below. I definitely want to hear your thoughts. Now, this next book was also part of my December wrap up, and I really think that it's super underrated on BookTube. It came out over the summer in 2020 and I didn't hear anybody talking about it. I took a while to read it, but I am so glad that I finally read it because it is so worth your time. I'm also surprised because my favorite book of 2020 happens to be a sci-fi read, and though I do read sci-fi on occasion, they never end up reading my favorites, so that says a lot about this book, and that is The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This is the beautiful UK cover. It is absolutely stunning and gorgeous, and this is Micaiah Johnson's debut novel, and what a novel it is. If you like multiverses, if you like traveling between universes, if you like a really well thought out checks and balances system, if you like a writer that can combine the spiritual aspect plus the scientific aspect in a sci-fi novel and present them to you as if they were equal but still really interesting, if you like a bit of mystery and thriller and romance, and a good sapphic romance too, might I add, it is really good. It is so underrated, and I'm shocked that more people on BookTube aren't talking about it, so I want to shout it from the rooftops. This is the best book for me of 2020, and if you haven't read it and you love sci-fi or you love fantasy, YA or adult, I think honestly with the themes in this one, they're dark, they're complex, they're riveting. An adult reader will really enjoy this book. And it's more on the new adult side anyway. It's definitely probably a little too dark and complex to be a YA read, but it is so good. There are some trigger warnings with this one as well. It does have sexual assault and abuse, so just in case either of those things do trigger you very deeply, I would go into this book with just knowing that information so that you don't get caught off guard. But it is a very intense, it is a very rich, complex, and deep world, and the characters do have a lot of skeletons in their closet. This book is definitely worth your time. If anyone that loves sci-fi and fantasy as much as I do has read this book, please let me know what you thought of it. I definitely want to hear more about some folks that have read it. So far, I've only found one person on Bookstagram that has read it and that has really enjoyed it, but I haven't seen anybody on BookTube talk about it, and it is so underrated. I cannot say that enough. And for a debut novel, this is amazing. It's amazing. So those were the books that I loved in 2020, my favorites of the year. I did a top 5 format just because I wanted to give you a very curated list of what I really enjoyed from all the YA books that I read last year. And of course, this year, stay tuned for a favorites video that's going to be a little different when the end of the year hits. If you like this video, please click the like button. And if you did enjoy watching this video, you should click the subscribe button so that you don't miss any videos from me. Thank you.